So the new OnePlus 7 and OnePlus 7 Pro are launching soon, and I'm sure those are awesome phones, but today I want to help you decide to pick one up, not by talking about those. See, here's the thing, I've been using OnePlus phones for 5 years? Wait, hold on a second. This is it right here. This is when I ordered my first OnePlus phone. This was the OnePlus One. I ordered it November 28, 2014. In fact, I still have it. It got ran over by a car. That wasn't OnePlus's fault. It's a long story, but if you're interested in hanging around, I guess I'll tell you what happened to it at the end of the video. In fact, I should mention before I continue that I am also a OnePlus Ambassador. It's a program started by OnePlus late last year for people who are passionate about OnePlus, and as you know, I've been using them for a while, so that's kind of me. OnePlus even flew all the ambassadors out to New York late last year for the 6T launch and everything. They just turned out the lights. It's like the quiet before the really awesome storm. Full video about that right there. And I just wanted to mention that in all transparency. I'm just a guy that is explaining why I've been using OnePlus as my daily driver for so long and my experience with their products, some good and some bad. Let's start here, the price. This is what got me into the door, considering at the time a company that I had never heard of. They used to advertise themselves as the flagship killer for half the price or something like that. If you can even call what they did advertising, it was more of like a word to mouth kind of thing back in those days. And you can even see on my first purchase, that was pretty darn true. I mean, even today you can see iPhone and Samsung wanting $900 or $1,000, and at the very same time you can see OnePlus selling their 6T starting at just $550. So even in the scheme of things today, they are still somewhere around half the price. But that's not the full story, because there are plenty of cheap phones out there, but when you hold a OnePlus phone, it doesn't feel like a half-priced experience. It feels every bit as good as phones that are so much more expensive. In fact, I'd even argue that in most cases, the actual speed of a OnePlus phone, opening apps and having all these apps running in the background, can a lot of times be superior to phones that are much more expensive. But you know, that's not the full story either, because I would say that every single time they launch a new phone, they try to add some kind of feature that separates them from the pack. Like last year with the 6T, they put a fingerprint sensor under the glass. They were one of the first phone makers to do that. And this year it looks like they're going with a completely bezel-less front with a pop-up front camera. So it's not that they're just giving you the same thing at a better price. Sometimes they're actually giving you something that's better than what other phones offer out there. And like, listen, that's all great. But for me, there are two things that make OnePlus phones my phone of choice. First, and this is something they've done since the very first OnePlus One, they pack it with more RAM than basically any other phone maker out there, at least typically. Like when iPhone was barely putting 1 gig in there, OnePlus was tossing in 3 gigs of RAM. And why does that matter? Well, I would argue that the more RAM you put into a phone, the longer it's going to last you and give you a more consistent, good experience. And that's because as technology and app development is advancing, it's not so much the processor on your phone that's going to hinder your experience. It's how much memory or RAM that your phone has that allows those apps to run more smoothly. Hey, I'd even argue that some phone makers out there, I won't name any names, they limit the amount of RAM in your phone to encourage you to upgrade sooner than you would have otherwise. With that lack of RAM, when a new phone comes out, all of a sudden your old phone might not be feeling so speedy and snappy as it used to because it just needs more RAM than it used to. And listen, that's not to say that RAM is the only reason that a phone might lose some of its speed over time. That might be a bit of an overstatement, but it's definitely a contributor. This right here is my OnePlus 3. I bought it 3 years ago, and at the time, it had 6 gigs of RAM. That was way overkill for the time, but even to this day, I still sometimes will boot it up and it works great. After it had been working perfectly for so long, it finally had an issue. The back camera stopped autofocusing, but this was after 2 long years of use. Hey, OnePlus isn't perfect, but this was still a great phone. Hey, even some of their phones get ran over by cars. But I said earlier, there are 2 reasons that stand out to me, and the other reason is OnePlus truly stands behind their phones. Get this, 3 weeks ago, it was announced by OnePlus that this phone, this 3-year-old phone, was going to get upgraded to Android 9.0. That's the version of Android that the 6 and 6T are running, by the way. And I remember buying the OnePlus 6, it coming in the mail, and it having Face Unlock, which was a new feature at the time. And then later, like that week, I got an update on this phone that added Face Unlock to this phone. I mean, how cool is that? That is absolutely a feature they didn't need to add, but they did anyway. I mean, no one was gonna pick it outside the OnePlus HQ demanding Face Unlock on their 2-year-old phone. This is probably the main reason that I argue OnePlus is worthy of being your phone of choice. They update their phones better than basically any other manufacturer that I'm aware of outside of Google, and they might even do a better job than them. I don't know. I'd say when Google announces a new update for Android, typically Pixel phones, which are the Google-made phones, will be the first to get that update. And from my personal experience, again, I've been using them for a long time, OnePlus seems to be one of the first to bring those new features to their phones. Now, I'm not gonna say that every OnePlus phone is better in every other way to all the competition out there, but OnePlus creates amazing phones for a fair price, and then years on down, they stand behind them. And OnePlus does more than just make great phones. They care. I think that's why OnePlus has a massive and passionate following. And that's why when I was applying to become a brand ambassador for OnePlus, I was one of many. As I said earlier, I had the opportunity when I was in New York to meet a lot of the OnePlus staff. I had this bug on my OnePlus 6 at the time. It was just a little bug, but I saw one of the developers for OnePlus there, and I was like, hey man, I've been dealing with this little bug, and he immediately grabbed the phone out of my hand and he started trying to fix it on the spot. No joke. That was just one OnePlus phone with one small issue. I think at the heart of it, that's what makes OnePlus different. That's my take anyway. Are you a OnePlus user? If so, let me know in the comments why. Or has some other smartphone brand stolen your heart? Let me know in the comments who they are and what makes them special. And I guess I owe you a story of how I destroyed this phone. Okay, so here's what happened. It was really late one night and it was raining really hard, and I went out to go work out, and I do work out, by the way. I do see some of your comments below, some of them nice, some of them not so much. Anyway, I was going to work out at the LA Fitness. It was raining really hard, but it wasn't like a normal type of rain where you can just kind of make your way through it and it's a little miserable. It was like a cold rain. I get out of the car and I just start running, and I have my Bluetooth headphones in and my phone's in my pocket. And then by the time I make it to the door, I realize that my Bluetooth headphones are saying disconnected. My phone was no longer in my pocket. And so I told my wife, she was with me, and we started like looking all over the parking lot trying to find this phone. But here's a lesson that I learned. Don't ever have a completely black case on your phone. I know it looked cool. The problem was I could not see it on black pavement. Like we went back and forth retracing my trail, and I was just soaking wet. And I'm just trying to find this thing. And literally for 30 straight minutes, I'm trying to find this thing. But it was funny, my Bluetooth headphones would say connected, and I'd be like, okay, it's somewhere in this area, and then it'd be like disconnected. But the range of it was so wide, like I couldn't really kind of zero it in. And finally my wife sees a black thing on the ground, and she's like, hey, I think that's, and as she's walking towards it, a car drives by and plunk plunk. And she's like, oh, yep, that was it. And then she grabs it and she shows it to me. And that's when I bought the OnePlus 3.